Welcome to Aspire to Lead, where we empower educators and school leaders to grow, inspire, and thrive. I'm your host, Joshua Stamper, author, speaker, and leadership coach, bringing you conversations that spark transformation, challenge the status quo in education, and equip you to make a lasting impact on your campus or in your district. For more information and resources, visit joshstamper.com as we're looking to ascend to new leadership heights together. Welcome back to Aspire to Lead. I have a fantastic guest who annually comes onto the podcast since I think 2019. So it's been a while. You got to check out the previous episodes with my good friend CJ Reynolds, who is just an amazing educator, author, speaks. He's got a ton of resources and just an overall great guy. So CJ, thank you so much for joining me once again for our annual Aspire to Lead podcast episodes.
Thanks, man. I'm glad you're still doing it. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. You can't get rid of me yet, CJ. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. 9 years. The podcast has been going on for 9 years.
That's crazy. Yeah. Our live feed that we do every Sunday we just hit 10. And it's like, I look at old episodes, I'm like, I have brown hair. It's my marker for how much time has passed.
Yeah. My beard wasn't as white when I first started. So people can go back on YouTube and check that out. But CJ, you are doing a ton of different projects and work. Man, every time I see you online, you're doing something new. So would you just give us a little bit of an update? Last time we checked in, I think might have been your first year in New Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. We are coming up on 3 years in New Mexico. So for people that don't know, that have no idea who I am. So I taught in West Philadelphia for 17 years, something like that. And then moved to New Mexico. I live in the middle of nowhere. I started subbing at my school in our second year here. And last year was my first time teaching in have my own classroom and stuff in New Mexico. So this will be my second year, which has been a whole journey. But other than that, I mean, gosh, I feel like we do all the things. I get like I'm raising two teenagers. They're junior and a senior this year, teaching, starting a new elective this year, still speaking, doing professional development for schools and things of that nature, creating products for teachers, running YouTube channel, like all the stuff. So it's interesting. It's interesting life that I never thought that I would have. It's awesome. So we can get into any of that stuff. That's all I'll say, because I'll just take every rabbit hole and run down it. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do want to go down a little bit. I want you to think about your last 20 years. And I want you to think about all the different school environments you've been in. I know before you pushed record, you had said something I thought was funny, because I feel the same way. Is regardless of where you go, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah. Regardless
of state, city, school. And I want to know, what has helped you stay connected to your purpose and your passion for the 20 years that you've been teaching?
So as a person of faith, I'm listening for what God has for me to do next. And when God's not changing the plan, I'm not changing the plan either, right? So that's part of where I come from with a lot of this stuff is so we have new superintendent this year, pulled me aside last night, and he was like, I need you to do more at the school. And part of my contract, and I realized very uncommon, part of my contract was I get to be able to take off when I have to do speaking engagements. I'm not doing any traditional duties. I'd rather play on the playground with kids and build connection than have to stand there and police the playground. He's like, we need you to do more. And I said, I can't. And he was like, they wanted me to assume a leadership role this year too at the school. And I said, until I hear otherwise, I'm living in these two worlds. So the purpose has always been kids. And I think the older I've gotten, the longer I've done this, the more I realize that it's kids over content. And that, I've been saying it since day one, but education's only ever about the students. So if your plan as a school, if your new initiative, if your system, if your whatever you're doing does not support kids growing into who they're meant to be, I'm not doing it. And that ruffles feathers, but I've gotten better at having those uncomfortable conversations along the way to be really rooted in that. And that has never failed me. Yeah. I just every time I put in the kids or put other duties aside so I can be there for a child, it's never something I've ever regretted.
Did it take you a while to figure out how to create those boundaries?
I think so, because I grew up as a real rule follower. If we were supposed to do something, my parents were that's how I was kind of just raised. One of the things I talk to teachers about is when you're lost at school or you're having a hard time or you feel burnt out, just find younger you and help them. It'll right the ship, because those are the kids you already know how to deal with. So high school me, I was already into skateboarding, got into surfing, got into like punk and metal music and a lot of like old school hip hop. So like I loved Public Enemy. And I was like trying to fight the power, you know what I mean? Like in my own little way. And I don't think that's ever left me. So I think that the root of that was there. But then as you're getting older, it's who am I meant to become? And really thinking about that. And I think that's part of, I don't know that that's everyone's job in education, but that's part of the giftedness that's been given to me is to sort of like push back or look at things and make sure like, are we staying true to our values and our commitments and what's at the, like you said, like what's at the root of this, what's at the core? And if we're not, I'm going to create uncomfortable conversations for that. So I think it's developed over time, but the more you do, it's like a muscle. It is something now that I don't think twice about doing. Like it's more of just how can I be tactful and not just Philly. Like how do I not?
Does the Philly rub New Mexico wrong?
I have to regularly say, I'm not sure how else to say this. So please know I'm not trying to come off as combative, but Philly nature is like, you just say what you're thinking.
Yep.
Southwest is way more polite and hold your tongue. And I don't come from that. And so, but I have to remind myself again, Josh, it's like, if what I'm doing, if what I'm saying, it's not about me. If what I'm doing and saying is for kids, I gain confidence from that also. And so I think that's developed over time as well.
So the term fight the power, I feel like this is very much how maybe people look at you as a teacher because you are unorthodox. Like if anyone is following you on social media or has read your book, as far as teach your class off, you don't have very traditional concepts in there. So how is that viewed from the staff as far as the crazy things that you do in your classroom?
I think it's a mix, but I think this is such a dumb metaphor. There's people that go out on town and they're clowns, right? They're dressed like a clown. And when other people see them, they're either afraid of clowns. They think you're weird for being a clown until you see other clowns. And then they go, bro, where you been? We should hang out. That's what my feeling feels like when I'm in school and I find people that don't have to do the same stuff as me. We just had this conversation. We have like, there's PD that happens and then there's the PD after the PD, which is me and a group of individuals after the meeting having real talks about stuff. When I can find people that are really about kids, you don't have to do stuff. You don't have to be silly or weird, or you don't have to have the craziest room. You don't have none of that stuff has to be the same. Are you rooted in the mission of the work that we're doing? When I find those people, I'm all about it. When folks don't like it, I'm more than happy to have the conversation. Because I do a lot of stuff like on social where I hold these signs in the hallway, like on a stick, or I'm like blowing bubbles, or I'm shaking kids' hands with like lobster claws or robot arms or whatever, all kinds of dumb stuff. And I think that public joy is one of the most revolutionary things that you can do. Like when we talk about fight the power, like teachers are expected to be tired and worn out. And I just want to buck that whole system. So there are people that get aggravated at that because they think I'm just trying to stir up madness, and I'm not. I'm trying to bring joy to a kid's day that might not be having it. And so some people get on board with that. Some people get aggravated at it. Some people go, oh, that's a great idea. Can I do that also? And it's like, yeah, I'm not out here. I'm not trying to be Billy Idol dancing with myself. I'm trying to have like a whole party of people out here doing this stuff. So yeah, so it either creates community or just makes people mad.
So is that just teachers, or is leadership also view that as a clown show?
Both. So my superintendent last year said yes to everything and loved it. And now this year I'm trying to feel out. The new superintendent seems really great. Like we'll see when the rubber meets the road, like where we're at. But there are definitely people in leadership that I have now that are not about it. They think that school should be very strict. You start the first day with your policies, your procedures, all of your rules, all of the like kids need to know how they're going to get in trouble and what happens if you do. And I just won't do that. Like I'm supposed to do that the first day of school on this Monday, and I will not start the year that way.
Yeah, I agree. So if folks don't even understand what we're talking about, you have a book, Teach Your Class Off. You've got a website with the same moniker. I put that already on the screen for folks. What does that even look like in a classroom? If you can kind of create a short synopsis of the mindset there or the movement, and what are people going to find in those various resources to help them in the classroom? Teach
Your Class Off to me means fully being the teacher that you were created to be. So I think of teaching as like the Avengers, right? Like not everyone has the same skill, and maybe you're Thor, but maybe you just know how to shoot a bow and arrow really well. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be the same thing. My pastor, Darius Daniels, often says, you don't go as far as your dream, you go as far as your team. And so creating that team and then showing up and being the teacher that your students need, that you're teaching your students, not your lessons, that you are creating experiences for kids to really go from wherever they are to where they are destined to be or where they need to be. It's creating those moments of connection, of engagement, that I think that is, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is like, what have you been given to do? What is your giftedness? And then pour gasoline on that fire until, everything is caught up in it. And so that's really what I'm thinking about. And so over the years, I mean, even our YouTube channel has been about that. I started YouTube because my son wanted a YouTube channel. When 9-year-old him was like, this is too much work. I'm like, I know, it is. It's a ton of work. No one realizes. They just think you're posting stuff online. But I started creating stuff that I wish existed when I started teaching. The book has been the same thing. Every resource we make is the same thing. It's like, I wish this existed when I started, and that's why we make it, is for the people that we serve in our community. So to me, it's like, that's what it is. It's being what you've been given to be out loud.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you had talked about kind of bucking the system in the sense of like, I'm not starting day one telling the kids, don't do this, don't do that. And I'm assuming that you're taking more of a relational technique to it in regards to like getting to know your kids. So as far as what that looks like, what does like meaningful relationships with students look like for you, while also maintaining like high expectations and healthy boundaries?
Growing up, I went to a really rough high school in South Jersey. It was a vocational school. So what that means is like you go to school for like 3 or 4 periods a day and you learn a trade. I thought it was great. I'm like, wood shop for 4 periods a day sounds awesome. I didn't realize that it was all the kids that were getting kicked out of other schools, that this was like before they had like sort of like
alternative
for students. Yeah. And they were just, all those kids would go to my school. So it was a very, very violent place. I didn't talk to anyone for my entire 9th grade year. I had no friends. I was afraid to use the bathroom at my school because there were so many fights that happened in there on any given day. So when I started teaching, the reason I picked 9th grade to be a 9th grade teacher was I looked for younger me. I like, who needed this version of me? And that's how I showed up. And then over time, when I think of relationships, it's evolved because not everyone needs you, right? Like not everyone needs, like, whoever's watching this, whoever's listening, they don't need you, but somebody does. And not everyone has the capacity for every kid. I wanted to be like the favorite teacher or I don't know. And a bit of that was like more about me than about students. But like, I realized that I don't have the capacity for every kid. So that's shifted. And then I think, man, I have relationships from kids that I student taught. I went back to Philly and I went out to dinner with one student. And she posted it online. And then I started getting all these texts of like, you were in Philly and you didn't tell us. And so we're going to do a meetup. I'm going to be back at the beginning of September. We're going to do a meetup with all these old students. But it is, to me, something that has evolved over time that I didn't expect that either, of like, no, I want to know what happens for the rest of your life. I'm not interested in just this year. It's not a tactic to get you to do well in school. It is, when I say that you matter, that you're important, that I care forever. And so I want kids to know that. And then, little things, Josh, like I used to think, the last thing I'll say is I thought that I had to have an answer for everything for kids. And I don't. There's so much stuff that I've never had to live through. I've never been in the foster care system. My parents have never been divorced. I've never had food insecurity in my house, right? Like, there's all these things our students are wrestling with that I never had to go through. And long story short, I once was taught by a student that your attention is more important than your advice. And so holding on to that has helped me to really develop relationships, because I didn't feel like I had to fit my words in or make you feel better or anything. It was like, sometimes you're crying and you just need a hug. Sometimes you're hurt and you just need someone to sit in the mud with you while you know that you're not alone. And I don't have to say a blessed thing in those moments. that is a little bit of how I'd answer that question.
So we're in kind of a happy stage right now. Everyone's going to be coming in excited. They got their new clothes or pencils, or, the classroom looks nice and everyone's had a break. But we know in a couple months that's going to slowly go away.
Yeah.
So for the teachers that are listening, for the administrators, like when it feels chaotic and maybe student engagement is low, what are some of the things that you help teachers with? Because I know this is something that comes up often. I even know like some of the resources on your website too, which we'll talk about later in regards to some blueprints that you've got. But, what should teachers do to help shift that back to the environment that maybe started off right now at the beginning of the school year?
It's really like self-care is so overused, and I don't think folks really understand what that means. But to me, I dealt with significant burnout before I left West Philly. It's hard to talk about, but we lost 6 boys to gun violence in just the year that I was done in Philly. Our school had 95% turnover 2 years in a row. We had 6 principals in 3 years. It was a madhouse. And I mean, the shootings outside of the school, like the whole bit. And I remember like just being so mad about all of this stuff. And I was talking to this therapist and he says, "What do you do for fun?" And I said, and I wasn't joking, I still would say this, I work. And he was like, "All right, so we got to talk about that."
He's like, "Oh no."
Yeah. I work for fun. Like I was at school till whatever time last night, like making balloon arches for the first day of school. So he says, "Let me ask you this. When you were a teenager, what did you do for fun?" And I said, so 18-year-old me, skateboarded most of the time, surfed in the summer, and played music with my friends. I grew up playing drums. He said, "What of those 3 things can you still do now?" And that was it. That was the direction. It's like, you have to do one of those things. So I bought a skateboard, right? And as a grown man, not going through a midlife crisis yet. And my daughter and I just started skating around our neighborhood. I didn't get into surfing again, but I got into boogie boarding because it was a lot easier to fit in my car.
Probably easier on your body too, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. So started playing music with folks again. And it taught me the difference between rest and rejuvenation. Rest is like stopping the motion of I've stopped. So that would be like if I'm getting enough sleep, if I'm like just box of wine and Netflix, right? But rejuvenation was what's filling me back up. And I feel like if you remember that, you can fill yourself back up. So thinking about what was something you enjoyed doing when you were a teenager, right? And can you do any of those things again? Whether it was like you were friggin' making zines or you played like field hockey, right? Can you find your version of that and do it again? Because when you come in, I find that when I come in on an 11, right? And even if my lesson plan is a 5 out of 10, bro, it's the best. It is. The only thing I can attach it to is like, if you could give Whitney Houston in her prime any song, it could be the most mid song ever. She's going to crush them. It just became magical, right? But if you gave someone who can't sing the greatest song ever, it's not so good. And so I would say to administrators and to staff members, it is self-care is the work. Doing things that are fun rejuvenate you, and you don't have to make it that deep, man. But like your kids, for folks that are out there someone's watching this and they think like, yeah, but I'm giving all to the kids. My friend Denise used to say, if the car ain't got gas, ain't nobody going anywhere. And so if you don't have to give, you're not giving anything anyway, except for your martyr story. And think of it as work for the kids. Then I'm out here surfing or boarding or riding my bike, whatever, for kids. This is part of the work. That work is important. So that's where I would start with that. But I feel like there's a whole bunch of things that can be said there. So,
well, you said something very astounding last time that we were together. So much so that I have it on a slide every single time I speak. And I reference you.
I heard that, thanks, man.
Yeah. So that's why I put it on the banner. You said mental wellness is professional development. And I hammer this home and I tell everyone when I speak, when I keynote, that they need to check out CJ Reynolds, teach your class off. Check him out on YouTube. He's amazing. So yeah, I think I really do believe this. Educators are the worst at this, is that they think that it's 2 separate things. And if you do anything for your mental wellness, it's a negative.
Yeah.
It's something that you shouldn't be doing. And there's sometimes guilt that's associated with that, because how dare I take time for myself versus serving my community, serving my parents, serving my students, serving my campus. And to your point, you're going to run out of gas at some point if you continue that mode of work, and never either resting or rejuvenating.
I think it also, a lot of those behaviors look like you're not being professional. Like we're supposed to like just grind, and I grind a lot, but I found that even being joyful is looked at as being unprofessional. And so if you are showing up on 11, like, who are you? Like, you must not have enough work to do. You're clearly not taking this seriously because you're feeling good, or I saw some research last year that said one of the reasons many women, as they get older, stop wearing colorful clothing is this because it's looked at as childish. And when women are often, so we're in a female dominated workspace, when you are in leadership and your lipstick's too bright, or your dress is too colorful, or your blouse is really playful, you get thought of as not, like, we can't take you seriously. And I mean, I think that there's something there. And it's like, no, that this is an expression of how I'm feeling, how I want to feel, how I want to communicate, we're trying to get the next generation to become teachers, but it's like every teacher looks miserable. Good luck, bro. And you're not making that much money. So this isn't, we're not doing any favors here. We're not being a good example of what could be for young people. So I think, again, being publicly joyful, whether that's in your dress, whether that's because you're pouring into yourself, is really important for our kids to learn and see what that looks like to be a really, truly happy adult.
Real quick, CJ, because I want to make that correlation, because I went through the same thing. As an administrator, I remember sitting in my car driving home going, I was stuck in my office all day. I didn't interact with very many folks, and the people that I did interact with pretty much yelled at me the entire day. And I was miserable. And I was like, I'm not finding joy in work specifically. I go home and I find great joy in my family, and I can do different things, right, to also find joy. However, I need to do something at the workplace that also gives me that same feeling. So you had talked about having a really tough time in Philly. That sounds like just a horrible situation. Did you do anything actually at work that were some practices that actually you found joy in to bring back kind of that feeling of like reinvigoration of finding the love for the job again?
Yeah, I think especially when your admin, we'll just say, like, my admin at that time was horrific. Their policies, procedures, the way that they spoke to children, the way they treated kids and teachers, it was unbelievable. It was really creating boundaries at that time. So one thing was I would leave. So I'm in West Philly, so there's not like cool coffee shops to go to. There was a Dunkin' Donuts. And part of my self-care act was I would leave. It was a 7-minute round trip to Dunkin' Donuts and back. I get a small cup of coffee. It gave me a respite of not being in the building and just driving, no radio on or anything, just quiet every day. I had a first period prep, which is like, I don't know how that ever happened, but it's like the most magical gift anyone can ever give you. But we would hang out in my friend's art room. So we wouldn't ever like turn them away, but we only told people that were excited about the job, that wanted to get better, that weren't just going to come in and like, you could have a hard day and we would talk about it. But if you were going to have a hard day, we're going to try and love you through that. And if that's not what you wanted, if you just wanted us to kind of like complain with you, it wasn't going to happen. So we protected that time where it was like first period of the day. All right, yo, what are you doing today? Here's what I'm doing. Hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Give me some ideas about this. And it was like a way for us to just kind of like psych each other up. I used to eat lunch twice a day with my students in my classroom. And instead I started doing one, and then having a time where teachers again could tap in and we would just talk about stuff that made us laugh, have a fun time. And then it was building in moments where it was enjoyable. And then, the other thing, Josh, is so growing up in the music that I grew up in, I've been in a lot of mosh pits. And if you've ever been in a mosh pit, you could just be getting pushed around, right? Or you're intentionally pushing around. And one of the greatest feelings I remember as a kid was, especially at real punk shows, if someone fell down in the mosh pit, you help them up. And there was always this feeling of like brotherhood or sisterhood with someone that you like helped up. So one of the things I would do is this again was like a 10-minute routine that I would do during the day. I just walk around the school and look for some kid that was hiding in the cafeteria, sitting in the stairwell, that whatever, right? Finding people that thought they were invisible and letting them know they're visible, trying to put a smile on someone's face, right? So even if that was, I would go sit with my friend Cho, and I have a picture of this around here somewhere, right here, because she hated this, that I would do this. She would be doing like very serious hallway monitoring, and I would tell kids, hey, listen, real quick, the floor's lava, so you have to just step on the blue tiles. I don't know how it happened, but I'm just looking out for your well-being. And then kids would really do it, and it took like this regular moment of the day. It made me laugh. It brought some levity to the kids, and it aggravated my friend Cho. So it was like a win-win-win for everybody, and it was trying to find those little moments where you're doing fun. Now, I've sort of systematized that over time, but like at that time, it was like, let me just go out and see if I can find a moment of levity, of joy for a moment. And that really, those little bits were a lot to like feed into the rest of my day so I could do the work I was given to do.
Yeah, and this is tough work. The thing I loved about what you're talking about, CJ, is it doesn't matter your title. Anything that you just talked through, anyone could do.
Yes.
On a campus.
Yeah.
Which could very easily bring joy. Or to your point, like I was an administrator. I didn't have four walls that I was bound by. I didn't have a schedule that I had to really be structured in. And so I could just walk around the campus. And I was having a lot of memories of finding kids in bathrooms and finding kids in various places that were going through a tough time, and they wanted to escape, and they were only dealing with it the way they knew how. And to have those opportunities to be that person, to your point of being in the mosh pit with them and pulling them up in that moment, you could see kind of like the weight being lifted off of them as they're sharing about what was going on, and then being able to provide those resources. And it does make you feel like $1 million that you helped someone out in that day, even though you're not the one going through it. At least you're, to your point earlier, being the listening ear and hopefully helping them through a really, really difficult time. So I loved all of those opportunities that you had provided for folks, because I think people do need to find, what was your why? Like, why did you get an education? Is that why, or like your identity in that why, is that something that you do every single day? I know for myself, I actually wrote this on my board, and I talk about this in my keynote, is like, I wrote down relational leader. Like, I wanted to be a relational leader. So if that's my identity, then how am I doing that every single day? Having that visible helped so much for me to understand like who I was and what I needed to do each day, versus sometimes just getting into the mundane things that really kind of suck us dry.
So when you do that, when you made that sort of declaration, you write it on the whiteboard, what's like a first step? Because that's a big title, and that's a lot. It sounds like a lot of responsibility. And in a world where we're a little like, people can be nervous to build relationships, right? Because there's all kinds of people that take it too far and in the wrong way.
Sure.
Or now the kids think we're friends, and so like, what would be like a first step that you would take to go towards that direction?
I talked through healthy habits. So this was a healthy habit for me. So not only having the title there as far as my identity, but then also having things that got me out of my office. That was my big thing, was I was feeling like I was just stuck too often. And so my first thing was I needed to get out of my office to have conversations about anything but school. So that could be with a student, or that could be with a staff member. And that was just 3 to 5 minutes. And I coined it relationship walks. And so with my staff, it actually started with students and staff, and I still would do it with students, but with my staff, I was very intentional. And I actually had a spreadsheet that I had on a clipboard and a pen. And I actually would stage it too, CJ. So I'd stick it in front of my computer when I would leave, so I'd see it in the morning, because typically I would come in and I'd log into the computer. So I'd have the clipboard there. And so it was one of my first things I would do in the day, is walk around and have a conversation with the teacher and just get to know who they were and what was going on in the world. And I would kind of like just check it off. I just wanted to get to know people, and it filled my cup doing that. And I know it filled theirs. But then also what I didn't realize later on is it created this really beautiful culture and community. And so, like, for instance, later in the year, they'd come in and tell me some just horrendous things that were going on in their life that I didn't know about, right? They'd come in, they'd be smiling, they'd do a beautiful lesson, they created relationships with their kids, and they were going through a horrible divorce, or their significant other lost their job, or they're going through a custody battle, things like that, where I could then be a listening ear, but then also hopefully provide something in regards to resources, or even just knowing that they were going through that kind of gives us a little bit different understanding of our expectations of them too. We do check-ins with our kids, but how often as leaders do we do check-ins with our staff?
And how small of a move that is, right?
Small.
To take 5 minutes and do that takes people from feeling like the teacher that thought they were invisible, to let them know they're visible. That how much time, energy, and effort educators are putting into, especially this time of year, their classroom, money that comes out of their own pocket, doing things to make magic for kids, and to have someone just have simple acknowledgement. I'll tell you, last night, I'm trying to start a movement of like decorating high school like entryways again, not just the door, but like the whole entryway, because we do that in elementary and no one does it in high school. And so I did it a lot last year, so I have it for the beginning of the year. I did it. Then we found out new kids that were coming to the school this year. I have 2 seniors that will be their first and last year at my school. So we decorated the lockers of all the new students, and I had a bunch of kids come in and help me do it. And then we made like a big balloon arch for the front of our school. It's like things that our school doesn't typically do. And so me and my wife and a bunch of kids did it last night. I can tell you that I noted, right? I'm not looking for praise, not from anybody. The greatest thing is to see parents and kids come in and be like happy about it. And I got a ton of compliments from parents or people asking like, oh my gosh, looks so much more festive this year. Like, what'd y'all do? Not one administrator, and they all walked by me. Not one said thank you, said this looks great, said we appreciate you doing this. Not one. And it's an interesting note that like when you do affirm someone for doing the right thing, it causes them to want to do it more and to do it for others. So I'm sure, like you said, building that culture, you going in and checking in, hey, how's your weekend? How was your son's birthday? How's your dog doing after the operation, right? For a couple minutes makes them say to somebody else, right? Like they're doing their own stamper thing over here and loving on others. It builds that culture. It is huge, and it is not talked about enough, I don't think.
All right, buddy. I want to talk about how you're assisting educators, because I know you're doing beautiful things. We've referenced several opportunities that you've done, and I love the entryway. I so badly. Have you posted on social media?
Not yet. I'm going to make. It's been so busy.
I know,
and I don't have permission slips from all these kids walking in and out of my room yet. So I gotta get those permission slips first. But yeah, that's coming.
That's coming. I want to see it so bad, but I want to talk about the online resources, because I know you've been providing workshops. You've got blueprints. You've got all kinds of things in addition to the YouTube page. Are you still doing the live events too?
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I haven't stopped. There's not anything I've stopped doing.
I figured it's still on the plate, but I just wanted to ask before I threw it out there. But you do so much for educators. So can you just walk through, if we have someone that's maybe starting the year, but they're struggling and they need something. I know you have so many different resources for folks. So will you just walk them through that?
So it's, what's funny is like being a teacher is, I talk about this in my book too, with regards to the classroom, but like, it's really just being a DJ, right? I'm just taking other people's music and mixing it in my own way. So what I found is that I like collecting all these different bits and information and tactics and stuff like that. And so we started creating really simple blueprints for educators. So I have like a classroom management blueprint that is because folks ask for things. They ask for like, hey, what's the script that you use? What if it's that one kid in class that won't behave? What if I've talked to them again and again and again? And it dispels a lot of bad practices as well. But it's like, here's the do's and don'ts of classroom management that work in real life in my classroom. It's not theory. It's not fluff. I didn't teach for a year and then become a speaker. This is stuff I've done for over 20 years. And there's a lot of stuff I did that didn't work. And we don't need to get into all that right now. But it's like, these are my tried and true things that every single year they work and help kids to move into a place of success instead of like just, fail or like further failing. We made a buy-in blueprint. We do live events during the year. I speak and lead professional development at schools, but it's all stuff that, again, like I said in the beginning, it's like stuff I wish I had when I was a young teacher that just didn't exist. And a lot of teachers know out there that you're going to sit in professional development meetings. Maybe you already have at the beginning of this year, maybe you're going to, that are like, they're worthless. I will be that blunt. Like, that's the Philly. So it is like, they are just, there's no usefulness that I'm not any better equipped to serve my students and their community than I was when I came in here. I'm actually like feeling more lackluster about it. So we're trying to create things that people will read. It gives you everything you need to do it. And then you're like, dude, I can do this. Like when you break it down like that, I can do this. And that's what we're trying to create for folks, is like positive momentum and a little bit of courage on your side. And so that, you can do the job that, you've been given to do.
No, I love it so much. You had talked about, well, the Philly came out and you talked about bad PD.
Yes.
Yours is not like that. I've seen you speak before. You do a wonderful job. And I know you were just in another district not too long ago, helping out, kicking things off. So if someone's looking for a speaker or a trainer for their campus or their district, what is it that you are talking about in your PD sessions?
So everything's customized. I don't have like a canned talk. I talk to leaders of schools and there's a lot of overlaps. It's not like I'm creating everything from scratch every time, but it's like, what do you need? Are you looking for buy-in? Do you have classroom management issues? Do you have students that come from a certain neighborhood, but all your staff are helicoptering in from somewhere else and don't really understand the culture in the community? Like, it is really trying to listen. The same stuff we do in class, right? It's like listening to who your students are, whether they're teachers or they're high school students or grade school students, and then teaching the student so that we can strengthen their ability. And that's by and large what we've been able to do. And it's the most fun, dude. I love doing it. It's hard to leave the classroom and do that because I get all the emails of like, where are you? I hate this sub. She's driving me crazy. Bro, I already told you I'm going to be in Washington for 2 days. You need to come back. I'm like, I am trying to, this funds my ability to be able to be with you, child. So
the worst, CJ, was it was the best and the worst. The best was that I got to be an administrator for a whole month as a teacher, but I then had a long-term sub on my campus.
Oh.
Guess how many times I had to go to that classroom? My own classroom.
Yeah.
It was like every day. It was ridiculous.
But you don't even it's like, you're not getting to fully do the thing.
No.
The school didn't solve that problem.
No. The sub problem is another. We could probably riff on that for a little while.
Gosh,
we got some blueprints for subs,
dude. I've thought about it. One of the best things I did was when I started in New Mexico and I was looking for a position, I started subbing again, and I hated subbing before I taught. I did it for 2 weeks, and I thought, this is the worst. I don't know these kids. I don't know the routines. I find that kids will typically, not long-term subs, but subs, they're generally behaved in a particular class. It's because that teacher holds it down. When they are wild during regular days with anyone, then they're going to be wild for the sub. And I couldn't stand not having any, like, not just control, but like
rapport.
Like there was nothing, like I couldn't like move the room in the same way. And it sucked. It was such a good reminder that happens. And even now, like since I did that, my sub work has changed. Like what I expect of a substitute, how I talk to my kids when I know I'm not going to be out. Like there's so much more that goes into that because that is a very, very tough and thankless job.
Oh yeah.
And if you get a bad sub, it's like, good Lord, like what's going to happen to your room? There's stuff everywhere. Why is there a picture on the floor right now? Like why is stuff out that should never have been touched to begin with? Yeah. God bless them, man. I think that's the hardest job in education is trying to be a substitute, honest God.
By far. Yeah. Shout out to anyone that's subbing, that's listening. All right. CJ, we do this every time. I feel like you've done this. I don't know how many times you've been on here. 6 times?
Go for it.
I love that folks are listening. I hope they're taking notes. I hope that they're implementing something. But in regards to their leadership journey, so our aspiring or current leaders, if there's something they can do tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey, what would you recommend?
I think one, you said something really profound earlier, which was you need to get out of your office. And I think teachers can do this too, right? Get out of your classroom, go be in the hallways, be where the people are, and try and find like small ways to give someone their time back. We know that like you have a lot on your plate. You have a lot to do. But I love Simon Sinek's idea of like leaders eat last. And I think of often like some of the things that have meant the most to me is when I've been on lunch duty and no attendant comes downstairs, my principal, and goes, Reynolds, I got it today. Go, you have a prep, or go eat, go get lunch, or whatever. Like, just being, as C.S. Lewis says, surprised by joy. And when folks are just willing to do those little things to make it, like, not feel bad about calling out when my kids are sick, right? Not making a big deal out of little things, not micromanaging, but just showing up and thinking, how may I serve my staff? Because look, your kids are coming and going, bro. Like, this is one of the things that I think we don't realize is, like, your kids are coming and going, and they're always new. But our staff, hopefully, they'll be there 10, 20, 30 years. How am I making this person so glad they are here that they never want to leave, because they're only going to be a better teacher when I do that? And looking for those little ways that you can do that, dude, that stuff is huge to me. So it's finding those small ways. And I think the way you do it is by getting to know them and getting to know what they need. There's a guy, I'm going to forget his name all of a sudden. He's a creator of Shake Shack. Says, always be collecting dots so you can always be connecting dots. And I love this idea of, what do I know about this person so then I can serve them in a way that is really meaningful to them?
Yeah, I love that quote. That's awesome. And regardless of your position, again, I know we have aspiring folks that are listening and some that are in leadership positions. Everything you're talking about, CJ, is something that you should be and can be doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. All right. This is the part where I want folks to connect with you. So we've been flashing your website. We've talked about your book. We've talked about your website a little bit, but for folks who want to check out your YouTube or social media, how can they connect with you?
You can just go to teachyourclassoff.com, or if you Google CJ Reynolds, it's only me and Ryan that show up when you put in Reynolds. But I get called Ryan all the time, which is a whole other story. But yeah,
I see the similarities, bud.
Just reach out. And look, the reason I even tell folks that is, like, I really want to help as many teachers as I can in my life. And so if you have a problem, if you're frustrated, if you heard something today in this conversation, you're not really sure what that means for you, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM. I'd be more than happy to help you with anything that I can.
Yeah. And I truly want to let folks know that that's truly the case. Like, CJ is an amazing person. And if you have a question, you want to reach out, make sure you do so, because he will reach out to you, give you some resources, help you in any way. I know a lot of folks do that in the world of education with you. So I just appreciate your openness and just your willingness to create joy on the campus, but then also be a helpful hand for all of our many mosh pitters out there that need to be picked up. So with that, buddy, it's great to see you. Thank you again for our annual visit.
You got it.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.